people, you've reached Sweden on for Alberta Youth Talk Radio in partnership with Operation Expose Child Protective Services in Canada. So let's just listen to the song and I'll be back to talk to you. Alright, it's Sweden on here. And the other day we were supposed to have Mary, who is a former child psychologist of 30 years. We were going to talk a little bit about trauma, and we did. But unfortunately, some background noise kind of made it sort of unshareable. So anyway, I thought I'd touch today on trauma from my own experience. And the things that I'm talking about with my own life is not for me to sound like a victim or for me to have anybody, feel sorry for me. It's just to give awareness and insight on, maybe some of the homes that some of these foster kids come out of. We are finding that many homes are good homes. There's some dysfunction in them, and with enough support, the children don't ever have to leave. The amount of money that it costs to put a child into the foster care system, if you think about it, they're all their lawyers, supervisors, social workers, group home or foster home fees. The list goes on how expensive keeping a child in the system is. The system that taxpayers pay for, rather than putting that energy into the home. Like, for example, recently, in the last 3 years, when my son had gone into the system, I was only allowed to see him 4 hours once a week. And they even refused to give me the full training program that they had in order to get kids with behavioral and emotional issues back home again, because that wasn't their agenda. That wasn't their goal. Wasn't to return the child ever. So you think about the amount of hours that a child will spend in foster care or in a group home, and how much the staff are paid, as opposed to how much in-home support that parents get so they can get their kids home. I can tell you it's very minimal, very minimal. So we have Rachel Notley, our premier here in Alberta, stating that we need more foster homes. What we need is more people coming to support families. With a situation like mine, I never really had a parent, a good one. I had a very abusive grandmother. My mother committed suicide when I was 7, and I didn't know my dad, and I didn't have a lot of adult role models in and out of the system. So, when you have a background like that, it's very difficult to know how to parent. And I'll let you know much later on my situation on what happened when I did get pregnant, and my fears and some of the things that I was given, and some of the things that would have helped so much more. So I just want to retouch on, some of the trauma that happened when I was a child. I think a lot of kids who experience trauma don't really even realize they're being traumatized. The lifestyle is almost normal. The feelings that they have seem normal, but they're not. My mom had tried to put me, into care before I think she'd planned to take her life. And, children really know when somebody cares about you. And I remember not feeling cared about in the first foster home I was ever in. And then, being brought back home to the abusive situation that I was taken out of. I don't have the records, but I'm curious to see what my mother would have said to Children's Services about the reasons why she didn't want to leave me with her mother. I found out a lot later that my grandmother had historically physically assaulted all her children, including my one aunt who had a bleeding disorder. She, with my own mom, when my mom had a junior high graduation, and I guess she'd had a few drinks and came home tipsy. My grandmother had shoved mothballs down her throat and pushed her under the bed with a broom. It kept hitting her with the broom until she crawled underneath the bed to try to get away from her. So, like I said, I didn't really find out a lot of the ways that my grandmother treated my aunts and uncles and my own mother until I was probably past 18 years old. So I remember my grandmother would always tell me, "You're good for nothing, you're rotten, you'll never amount to anything, no good man will ever want you." Just ongoingly, quite a bit of verbal abuse. And so when I came back from the foster home, feeling, because they thought that I was too uncontrollable, again, many of these homes that children go into are not trained, are not, knowledgeable of how trauma and separation affects a child. So they start acting up, which is normal, which is a normal reaction. And all of a sudden they're like, "Well, we don't want to deal with this." And it's like, how they talk about the puppies or the kittens when they grow up. "Oh, this is too much trouble. I think we'll just get rid of this person, this little person." So anyway, my mom had committed suicide when I was 7 years old. I was in grade 2. And I actually had found out that I had been the top of my class when I was in grade 1. But after my mom died, understandably, my emotions and my concentration level went down quite a bit. And I remember having trouble concentrating in school and feeling very frustrated. And the teacher, obviously with an incredible lack of insight or empathy or understanding towards children, decided that it might help my attention if I got the strap. Jeez, I just can't believe that. Anyway, so, elementary school was really tough. I remember feeling pretty empty. I was always beat up, kind of bullied all the time. And then I'd go home, and my grandmother often would lose her temper with me. She'd either sometimes not be home till quite late out gambling, so I'd either have to sit on the porch or hope a neighbor felt sorry for me. Or, if she thought I was talking back too much, she would either lock me in the basement and turn out all the electricity, or lock me in the bathroom. There was a hook. And, or sometimes, if I came home late, she would throw hot water on me and leave me outside for a while. Even as a little kid, she'd actually tie me to the porch like like a dog. And, all the kids didn't like her in the neighborhood. They would always make fun of her. And thus, they kind of made fun of me, too. And so I remember just having no sense of feeling like I belonged anywhere. I had a few friends in the neighborhood that, thankfully, without them, I don't know what my life would have been like. But, you get that feeling when you're kind of hanging around too much, waiting for my grandmother to come home, and they're kind of wanting you to leave, but they don't want to tell you that because they know you have nowhere to go. So it was a really, really difficult feeling. And then, I was told by the neighbor when I was older that they actually called child welfare quite regularly on my grandmother. They were very worried about, the way that I was being treated, but they didn't really do anything. I had one police officer lady who decided that she'd be a quote-unquote mentor to me. Yeah, right. sure why there was clapping there, but anyway, so I remember her, and because my grandmother would always go, and she'd either talk on the bus or she'd talk to other people on how rotten I was and how horrible I was. And I remember this police officer, she met me just when I just started grade 7. And she went to tell me that I would never ever, just like my grandma said, would never amount to anything, and I'd probably be in jail by the time I was 16. What a great mentor. And then, so anyway, finally when I was taken away from my grandmother after she'd put a knife in my back, and I was in shelter, and I told you the experience of, going to the first group home I was in, and then being brought back to shelter to see if they could find me another home that they could put me in. So they did. They did find me a home, and it was probably one of the better ones. I was there for about a year, but the amount of bullying that happened there was just incredible. It was constant, and I had trouble with attachment. I couldn't get close to anybody, really, especially adults. I had absolutely no trust with adults at all. And so one day I wanted to go to a party, and they'd said no, and I just took off and ran away. And I kind of lived away from that group home for a few months, and then ended up finding out that they had given my bed away, so they never looked for me. They didn't really make much of an effort to try to find me. I was, another bed can, another person can fill the bed up and keep their finances, up. And one thing I can tell you is that runaway teenage girls are a huge attraction to adults who are attracted to young kids. When I had been in shelter, I had, I forgot to mention this, I had run away numerous of times. In fact, I ran away so many times that they had to put me in a nightgown and kind of homeschool me there. But my first runaway time was actually on the army barracks. I had run away, and some adults had kept us there, and some older teenage boys, one of them who had ended up being my boyfriend. And when you come from a home where you don't get very much affection or very much approval, you look for it elsewhere. So I was 13 years old, and had a boyfriend that was almost 18 years old that, of course, was mostly interested in one thing. And I had been a virgin at that time, but I kind of felt like the only way that I could get affection and love was that way. And yet there was a lot of shame because my grandmother was quite religious in an unbalanced way. She'd often tell me that I was going to die and burn in hell, and that I was that if you had sex before marriage, you were dirty and ugly and awful, and you were going to die. So my first time, I was kind of crying quite a bit. It was not the romantic stories you see on TV or anything like that for me. But I wanted to feel like I belonged somewhere, and it did feel like that for a while. I mean, there was a lot of times we didn't eat, but it was a home, and there was a number of times where I was with another teenage girl, and then a bunch of adult men, and then my teenage boyfriend, and it felt to me like a family. And but obviously it wasn't. It was extremely dysfunctional. But when kids don't have the love and affection that they need in a healthy way, they're going to go and find it elsewhere. So, the RCMP ended up, breaking the whole thing up and bringing me back to shelter, as I'd mentioned. And then I just wanted to, because I had kind of missed that one part. And then so after I left the other group home that I just talked about, I went kind of back to one of the adults that I had met when I was on the Army barracks. And he housed me, and I was able to stay there, and babysit and make enough money to survive. But I felt still very, very empty, and I felt that my worth was only, if boys or men found me sexually attractive. I didn't go around sleeping with everybody. I'm just saying that that's the only time I felt like I was valued or wanted. And so eventually I ended up being taken to an emergency foster home. And this was the only place ever that I felt like I was cared about. I actually felt they loved me, but obviously they didn't love me enough to keep me. But I remember just how well they took care of me and how they stood up for me and how they told me I should believe in myself. And it was very, very difficult being removed from that home. And then I was put in what was called the Salvation Army Children's Village, which was a place for children with severe emotional or behavioral challenges. So they kind of had stages there. Stage 1, you actually had to be followed around everywhere except to the bathroom. You're allowed to go to the bathroom by yourself. And then when you earned trust, you were allowed to go on around the cottage freely. And then once you gained trust, you're allowed to go on the grounds. There was like 5 cottages, I think there was. And then there was like a main area. And then eventually you were allowed to take the bus on your own. And so I liked it there. But again, you knew it was a group home. It wasn't people went home to their own families that they loved, and you were their job. So I just remember always feeling empty all the time everywhere I went, and just feeling, like they never really did anything to help me work through some of the things that I'd went through in my life, and taught me how I could heal some of these things and become a productive, healthy, happy adult. But when you don't have a sense of community, when you don't feel like you belong anywhere because you're always being shipped around, it's really, really difficult. And so you have children who are removed from homes, and like I said, some of them are good homes. They just need some extra support, and put into an environment where they know that they're not really important. They know that they're not loved. They know that this is just a job. And they test that out. I know kids test you. They want to say, okay, well, what is it going to take for you to want to get rid of me? Are you going to love me unconditionally the way a parent would? I mean, of course, there are some parents that aren't good. But I'm saying, as a norm, a parent who loves their child is willing to do almost anything to work through any issues their children have. They're not going to want to get rid of their child because there's challenges. They're going to look for solutions, better ways to communicate, buying books, going to experts, whatever they think. And so So instead of being put in a place of healing, where the children, especially if they have come from hell, a hell home, and then they move to another hell, and then they're called problematic because they don't know how to work through their anger or their pain or their suffering. And children are not little adults. They have a completely different way of viewing the world, and I think sometimes adults forget that. And they do not, you often hear, well, children are, they can recover, they can, much better than adults can. No, I don't really think so, unless they have the type of support and love and sense of belonging. No, they're not going to recover. They're going to become even more traumatized and look for ways to disassociate or look for ways to find acceptance and love in a negative way, through sex or through a gang or through, bad association or through crime, or even feeling like they need to go back to jail all the time because that's the only thing that they really see is something familiar and feel like maybe that's where they belong. So, yeah, we don't need more foster homes. We need more support and people who are going to love the children that have come out of abusive situations and really, really direct them towards healing rather than just getting a paycheck. So, when we talk to Mary, we're going to talk about the definition of trauma. We're going to talk about the ways that children will act out if they're traumatized and separated from a parent, especially if it's a parent that they love and that they're close to, which happens more than anybody really, really knows. Unless you have been kind of in this situation or you're close to somebody in this kind of situation, you're never going to really understand unless you really do the research and really look at statistics on what's happening in foster homes and group homes and children who are in the system. Looking at the statistics and then looking at where your taxpayer money is going to is going to be a rude awakening. So we'll definitely have a show about that too. But I want the kids to know that I understand. I have not been in your shoes or have had your life, but I know what it feels like to go through difficult times and to be tossed around from home to home. And we want to change the system. We want people to know what children feel when they're like in these homes. So maybe it might motivate and force change in this system. So anyway, this is Sweet Anon signing out. And like I said, we'll have Mary, 30-year child psychologist with a unique view on things. And she is on our page, open to answer questions for you if you feel like you need to ask anything. And she does have a spiritual way of looking at things. So we hope you don't mind that when you are asking her questions. So we're going to try to get this more regular. Technology seems to be kind of falling apart all the time. But the more we do this, the more regular it's going to be. So we want to hear from you. Please contact us. Your voice matters, and what you say is important. Thank you.